Good morning. Today is Sunday, May 12th? May 12th today, I think. And it is now a 78 lesson on Tanya that we're studying. And today we talk about our relationship with our family, with our children, with our parents, with our brothers and sisters, with our neighbors and friends. What's missing in this relationship? As I talked to someone yesterday, he mentioned to me the issue that he felt that his father very rarely calls him. He said that he calls his father, talks to him, but he says my dad never calls me. Does he really love him? He just give up on me. And I met other people who felt in the reverse situation, that they say the children don't call him or her often enough, or almost never. And that relationship between people, how do you attribute it to what lack of faith, like a belief in God? Like many people will say, well, that's ridiculous. What does God have to do with the fact that my family abandoned me, ignored me? What happens? I'm a good person. I didn't do anything really bad in my life. I mean, I made my mistakes, but is it to that extent that my family had to walk away from me, or I have to walk away from my family? This type of thing going through people's minds, and say, well, how does Tanya help them? Well, Tanya has a lot of direct messages and also subtle messages. Tanya sees this light and the evil, the light and the darkness, in a way that it opens up the hidden mix of everything together. In today's world, we also see a light against darkness, coming more and more clear. You can see the light and the darkness. You can see them separately, more and more separated. But eventually, when light and darkness are together, you cannot see the light and darkness. It's a mix. It's a gray area. But when the light becomes decondensed and separate from the darkness, then it can illuminate the darkness and remove it and bring the fulfillment of the prophecies of our prophets and of God to the world. So Tanya, now we're in lesson 78, we're now in chapter 48, and we talk about Tzimtzum, the contraction of several layers. The divine light gets reduced as it comes to us, because divine light is so bright and so intense that we can't take it. Analogies like a sun looks at, shines into our eyes, and without glasses, without filters, we cannot see that. So by the time it goes from Ein Sof through the highest level of Atzilut, then to Beria, Atzilut is emanation, then Atzilut, then Beria, the world of creation, then Yetzirah, formation, and ultimately to action, Asiya. When we see it, we can get a glimpse of God, glimpse of reality, but only a very filtered, narrowed, and shaded form together. So, how can a human being can explain that, as Tanya says, it's at the same time the presence of the infinity in us into a finite, it both existing and non-existent. Tanya said the presence of the blessed infinite light sometimes is a paradox. The light is present, in quotes, and accessible only in radically diminished form, but the real, undiminished light, non-present, merely penetrate through us, so to speak, in the sense that it is inaccessible to us. And that's despite the fact that it's really right here. Well, let's use this analogy. Imagine you're looking on your hand. You're looking in your hand. You and your hand. What is you? You includes your hand? Your hand, does it include you? So we're trying to establish analogy, God and us. So me and my hand. When I look in my hand, if I want it to move, it moves. If somebody moves my hand, my mind registers, my brain registers the movement. So on hand, in certain ways, it's not me, it's just hand, some subset of me. On the other hand is me. This is me. that is God. God is everywhere, non-duality of God. I am God, I am part of it, and yet I can talk about me and God, my relationship with God, hand relationship with me, a foot relationship with me. If you go further, if you take inorganic matter, let's take a stone. You're looking at a stone. At least when you look at the hand, you can perceive some motion, some feeling, something about the hand. Although many times we don't know our body situation, the state of the organs. But if you look at a stone doesn't know my presence. Does it know about my presence? In which way stone is aware of my presence? In which way? Does the stone have a mind? What if you cut the stone in half? Would each half now experience, the stone have a soul? I am aware of the stone, but by looking at the stone, I cannot influence it. Do I influence it? So if I speak to the stone, or if I speak to somebody, and my speech left me, my thoughts were formed, speech left me, my actions, movement of the lips put it into the existence, but that speech departed from me. But in God's way, analogy is similar, but in God's way, when God spoke, God is the ability to perceive the hand. It's Him outside the hand, and He is a hand. He is a giver. He is a power to give, and He is also a receiver. How does Tanya puts it? Tanya says He has a power. He is a knower, the known, and the power to know. All this reconnect: knower, power to know, me, my hand, and my ability to realize that, me and the stone, and my ability to influence it in the way of perception that it exists. A little bit Aristotle philosophy, I guess. It's interesting that Tanya mentions there that this is a word of Rambam. Rambam writes, the power to know, the knower, and the known. And through knowing himself, so to speak, he knows all the creations, not by knowing something outside of him, as in the case of human knowledge we just described, because all existence is actually derived from his true existence, through his concept, though his concept defines coherent mortal comprehension. And it's the note here is Rambam of Blessed. Rambam, this is Maimonides. I mean, from a year, common era, 1000 to 1200, for these 200 years, the famous generations of Achronoim, Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, Maimonides, Nachmanides. So Maimonides was a doctor, a very rational man. He lived, philosopher. He lived in Fez, in Egypt, then Morocco, Egypt. Then he was many times at odds with Kabbalah. He stood really a bit aloof from Kabbalah. He didn't take Kabbalah quite as literally and directly as Kabbalists did. But on that situation of the power to know, and knower, and known, the sages of the Kabbalah agreed with Rambam. Arizal and his right-hand man, disciple Rabbi Moshe Cordovera, wrote in his Pardes that Rambam understands its concept, presents its concept very similar to what Kabbalists. That's observance. So, in a very similar situation, when we talk about this concept, something, it's very difficult to perceive something from nothing. How do the world created from nothing? Where was this transition? Even when the light diminishes, when was the Kabbalah, Kabbalah struggles with that, or perhaps not, but we struggle understanding that, how is it possible? I can understand that the very, very great light on Atzilut got diminished through a filter into, it became less of that in Berea, and then even less in Yetzirah, and then Asiya. But initial step from infinity of Ein Sof to Atzilut, if infinity goes down to zillion trillions, still zillion trillions is nothing compared to infinity. And not a zillion trillions, but only 1,000. It's a lot less than zillion trillions, but it's also nothing compared to infinity. How does the first step of diminishment actually happen? Well, that's mechanics that perhaps most people really say, well, I don't need to know that. But the feeling, when you approach that on a concept pre-thought, we discussed about thought, speech, and action as the garments of the soul, divine soul and animal soul, then we can apply it also to the reality of relationship between people. Let's say, in a family, everybody lives together, like Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. Think about it. Abraham left the family. He went from Babylon, then Turkey, Ur-Kasdim, into Haran, and then into Canaan, to become Israel eventually. Isaac stayed in Israel. Abraham and Sarah left Israel temporarily to Egypt and came back. Isaac never left Israel. And then Jacob was surrounded by 12 sons, and even in exile in Egypt, he lived with the family. The Torah talks about it. Torah, 5 books of Moses, discusses that when Jacob lived with Joseph, the children of Menashe, which is great-grandchildren of Jacob, he raised them on his knee, Midrash talks about. So it was all family, Dad goes to work, and grandkids run there, hey, Grandpa, let's go fishing together. Okay, let's go fishing. So it's very dynamic. This is my home, this is my brother's home across the street, and next to it my grandchildren, great-grandchildren. My dad lives also over here with Mom. So it was very close family. It wasn't that the family, somebody lives in New York, and then the daughter goes to college to Los Angeles because that's the best neurotherapeutic school she wants to attend, and son wants to be a great artist, so he goes to Chicago to study arts. And then another child goes to Houston. Or the parents live in Israel and children still live in America, and therefore the distance. So even when that and for many of you listening to that, as I know from the past, it's very common to many people, that separation, that loneliness, that non-closeness of the ties, it's felt and painful. So one way to look into it is that, okay, or you can make let's say people live in Israel and their kids in America, you can pick a phone call and say, hey, how are you? Or you can turn the Zoom and see the picture. It's not quite the same in physical being in presence, hugging, kissing, loving each other by touching, but it's still connection. It's still connection. It's not the best, but it's still good to have them connection, communication, close. For whatever circumstances in the past, that separation happened. Unfortunately, the Western world evolved into a point of not only realizing that's not normal when the families separate, but now thinking that's how it's supposed to be. The bird's supposed to leave the nest. What's the matter with you if you're still in the nest? The Western world lost the concept of that closeness that meant by the Torah. And we suffer. All humanity will suffer because of that. But be as it may, even that situation, connection can be close, and yet within connection, we can still talk about anything we want and share with us. We can talk to our brother who lives in Canada, something that perhaps interests him and something that doesn't interest him, but he is interested to hear about what we're doing, even though to him or her personally it might not be interesting. That's called sensitivity. That's called really love of respect of another person, be willing to share with you what he feels, even though to you it may not be a big interest. We can talk about sports and what new refrigerator do you buy, and a little bit about the religion, a little bit about science, a little bit about politics, a little bit about anything, how you're doing, how kids are growing, how grandpa and grandma are doing this and that, how my sister, health, whatnot. We can talk about, yet from that talk, maybe a third of that is what I'm really interested, 2/3 might not, but for 10, 15 minutes, half an hour conversation on Zoom, even on the telephone, you feel that the person wants to know about you. That situation, the person not only doesn't want to know, but tells you, listen, don't talk about that, I don't care. Why you tell me about religion all the time? I don't care. Go sit in the mountain and pray. Or you talk about fishing. I'm not a fisherman, I'm not interested. Well, if you start carving things out, then you set the feeling that another person, that my son, my daughter, my brother, my sister, my dad, is not interested in me. He's only interested in what bothers him. Me? No. That's what the feeling of separation creates. So when God calls us and talks to us, we can think that we don't really experience Him by touch, but we're in communication. You say, oh yeah, how you doing, Dad? How you doing, Mom? You have this connection. You have this connection. And if you don't have this connection, in other words, that connection is like we talk about filter. You have a connection like a rope coming from this world, Asiya, through Yitzhira, through Beriah, through Atzilut to the Ein Sof, like a rope, like a line. And the aperture of that connection of each world is wide. And the light almost infinitely comes to you. That's in a good situation. Almost connect. You still cannot have full exposure. You can't get into somebody else's head, but you can get to the point that you can, I know what you mean. I feel it, Dad. Yeah, I feel it, my daughter. I know. Listen, I feel for you. Something is problematic, bothers me. What can I do to help? But if that connection is reduced, then your love still stays. But it's so close that you suffer. So Tanya is now asking a very interesting question. On one hand, God sent our souls, sent the souls down to this world to refine our world, to help us create, to finish the creation. That's our job here, to bring the light into the darkness. Elevate our soul up for that to do, and then for the light to come down and merge with the soul, make it one. Experience God directly without actually dying first, and then experience the infinite light that the soul observes in the world to come. So Tanya is saying, well, that's what God wants to do. He sends us as a messengers to the world. It's probably, He loves it. He, actually, Tanya says, it's painful experience to God, so to speak. Tanya says that God, I'm looking for the quote from the Tanya here. Yeah, that profound diminishment was necessary to bring about the highest world of Atzilut, because the world of Atzilut contains... Okay, so let's see. Where is that portion? I can't really find it. Okay. Yes. Tanya says that God, it's a difficult thing for God. In other words, I don't want to diminish my love and my exposure, my energy to my children. I don't want to diminish that. But if I open myself up completely, I'll burn them. The earth wants to fall into the sun, to be one with it. But if it does that, it evaporates. The life ceases to exist. So God wants to maintain His revelation to us, but in a diminished form in order to save us. That's a gift. That's the gift of the heart. That's the pain He is going through to present us that. That's what the parent does. So sometimes in situations like that, you withhold your true feelings. You would like to sit down and discuss with a brother that you have a little bit strained relationship with for many years. You want to talk about your life, or you want to talk to your children about something bothers you, with them being really interested. But by doing that, you kind of antagonize them, so to speak. You tell them, listen, in Yiddish, drainage dem Kopf, don't bother us with this. So from experience, you only talk about them about new refrigerator, or new car, or new basketball that grandkids went to see. And you don't talk about, and they don't ask you how you're doing. They don't ask you how you're doing. How's your health? Are you lonely? Are you missing us? Well, if you're missing us, why don't you come back? Well, what if you cannot come back? So you discuss that. This is a real conversation with love, to accept the reality as it is, and circumstances to which situation came to, in the abnormal way of the reality of today, not the way that it was in the past. But that relationship is not there. Is that insensitivity that our current civilization introduced? Is it a lack of feeling, reaching out to another person? Perhaps it is. But being that as it may, we then throttle our desire to communicate ourselves, to give it all of us to this, because giving that all is not wanted by the receiver. But we still want to maintain that connection, to maintain our love, with a hope that eventually that light will penetrate the darkness. And something clicks. And one day that your dad will, I'm talking to you, your dad will call you and say, listen, I'm so sorry, it just dawned on me. Last night I had a dream. I saw that video, I saw that clip, and it dawned on me, that's me. You're talking about me. I'm so sorry, I didn't know you're missing that. I really, honestly, I'm so busy, I have kids, and maybe your son will do it to you. If I'm talking to you, and if you're the son and you or daughter, you will wake up and say, or if you're the daughter-in-law, you'll say, I realize that I'm not encouraging my husband to call his mom and dad that are getting older and want to hear from him. And I tell him, listen, honey, you got to call your dad. What's wrong with you? You haven't, and you, my daughter-in-law, haven't spoken to me for 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, a long time. You can say, well, who are you to me? You're not my father, you're not my mother. Well, you're my father-in-law. Well, but I'm your husband's father or mother or brother. Don't you think it's a nice thing to do for him as a human being to express that love that maybe, you think, his father so much look forward to hear from, to have his sons and daughters, the grandchildren, to be in touch. Even the circumstances created physical separation, but emotional unity. To get to that point, to have this awakening, we pray that the light will penetrate the darkness. That evil, the darkness that prevents that to happening, will eventually disappear. It says, the Tanya said that even for Abraham Avinu, our father Abraham, it says, the Torah has a direct and esoteric interpretation. Directly, it says that, and Abraham journeyed onward in stages. Genesis 12, chapter 12, verse 9. And Abraham journeyed onward in stages. Well, on the first reading, it's just Abraham journeyed to the land of Canaan, eventually became a land of Israel. In stages, he went perhaps from Hebron to another town, to Ashkelon, to Beersheba, to Gaza, and then on to Egypt and came back. He traveled in stages. But Tanya says, in the spiritual level, he accepted the sovereign authority of God with all its linked rungs, and then he knew that the Blessed Holy One ruled over all. Then Abraham was crowned from rung to rung, as the verse states, and Abraham journeyed onward in stages. And that is perhaps we hope the same thing happens in our world, going through a lot of turmoil. And maybe that turmoil makes and will make further people to think. And ultimately that journey in stages get you to the stage that you will see that emotional connection, that heart connection between people, that desire to be understood, the desire to be loved, we express not only by thought, not that, yeah, Dad, I know I love you, I just don't have time to call very often. But love needs expression. The infinite light of feeling needs to also be spoken, needs to also be touched, needs to be visited to experience physical unity, even though it's still diminished in a way. But that opening, that aperture of the world will keep on opening, and the darkness will give to light, and light will illuminate it. That's what makes a true human being, to think ahead, like playing in chess, thinking 5, 10 moves away. Not only what happens to me now, but how does it affect other people? How does it affect my loved ones? What does it mean if I didn't call my grandchildren for 2 years? I love them very much. Well, do they know that? Well, they know that. How do you know they know that? How to express. The best way to do it is the way Tanya does, into the pre-thought, the feelings, the thought. Like a father looks at a son when he is 2 days old, lying in his crib. No thoughts, no words, no action, just connecting together. Just making this aperture open more and more. And I hope those of you listening to this recording, today is Sunday, May 12th, 2024. Hopefully it will give you hope. And those who need that motion, to need a little opening in your brains, in your hearts, the aperture being open to reach out and connect to those who need that connection so much. I hope it will help. Hope that will be a contribution into the universe. Hope it's another ladder, another rung in the development of the sensitivity, of kindness, of hesed, in addition to the needs of the physicality. Psychologists say that the way we treat our parents, our children will treat us. There's a lot of truth to that. So the future generations will repeat the action. They see, if they see that the parents don't communicate with grandparents very much, they will see that it's normal. Not that they don't love it, they say it's normal. But over time, it gets forgotten. We are handled, we are related to the way we relate to the previous generations. And it's not a curse of our times, but it's a destiny of our times to disperse the darkness, to bring the light, into expression. As the song says, love needs expression. With that, I wish you to get a call from your father that hasn't called you for a long time. And let's say if prophecy helps, and today the phone rings, and you do hear this, wouldn't you say that's a divine assistance? That's a divine action. So what you just heard this video clip, and it happened. Or you didn't hear from your son for a long time. You felt you've been ignored. And the phone rings, says, Dad, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy, I didn't think of it, but I realized I got it, I felt it. How much you needed me, how much you needed me. I'm not asking you to come back to my home, and I don't know how soon I can come and join you there, but I know how you feel. I just want to call you and tell you, I understand. Let's work together on that situation. You would not imagine, unbelievable how that light, how this energy will feel your souls, your heart, your mind, your cells. That is how that unity between you, between God and this world will become one, truly one. Not the duality. This is me and this is them. This is me and this is God, but one. And hopefully we can accelerate this process by doing the action on this world of Asiya, so that the world of Atzilut can come down and we can come up to that and reunite in thought, in feelings, in love, in physicality. And let us all say, Amen.